Today's video is about processed meats. But what exactly even is a processed meat? To understand what a processed meat is, you have to understand what an unprocessed meat is. An unprocessed meat is where it's basically just come off the animal and minimal stuff has been done to it. You slaughter the cow, you slaughter the animals, and then you take their cuts of meat, essentially. And that is the unprocessed meat. You've got the leg of lamb, you've got the rump steak, you've got the ribeye or whatever it is, it's essentially completely unprocessed at that point. It'll be shipped off to butchers, shipped off to supermarkets, and that is unprocessed. Processed meats then are anything where that meat is shipped off to companies and companies will then process that meat. You've got burgers. That is a processed meat. Burger patties are processed meat. You take that low quality cuts of beef that are sort of the spare parts off of the cow after it's been slaughtered. That goes to McDonald's or fast food restaurants and they'll then blend it, they'll then squish it into the patty shape, cook it, etc, etc, then it's in your system, right? You've then got things like sausages and salamis and all the different kinds of sausage shapes that sort of exist. There are loads of different kinds of sausages. You've got salami, general pork sausages, hot dogs, frankfurters and stuff. All that sort of stuff, that is all processed meats that are sort of blended and mushed and moulded that use low quality cuts of meat in the first place, the spare parts of the animal essentially. Now, one advantage of processed meats from a company point of view is that preservatives can be added to them when you sort of blend the meat and mush the meat and stuff. In that meat mixture, like you probably would have seen those disgusting videos when you were like just discovering the internet and just discovering how the real world work of like how McDonald's chicken nuggets are actually made and stuff like that. And it was like such a insane sight to see that this stuff was like quite a mushy substance that was then molded. In this mushy substance, when companies in their factories, they have massive big vats, right? They'll add preservatives into these big mushy vats and stuff, and that'll then mix around, and then when it comes out the other side, then they make their sausages and their things, and all that stuff's not just going to be on the surface, but it's going to be like throughout the whole sausage or the whole patty in a way. But when you have an unprocessed steak, you can't do that with an unprocessed steak, because the only way you can preserve it is by like adding stuff onto the surface. And the best way to do that would be to add salt, and that can often be quite nice tasting, and it really isn't as bad for your health compared to some of the preservatives that companies will put inside of processed meats. And the function of preservatives is just to essentially increase its shelf life inside of supermarkets. The way you do that with unprocessed meats is to like put salt all over it, but the way to do that with processed meats is, as I say, add it into the big vats, then it will come out, the mush will come out, and it will then be done to its stuff, and it'll be spread evenly throughout the thing. Now, an example of some preservatives are nitrates and nitrites. These nitrates and nitrites inside of the body can turn into each other during certain enzymatic reactions. But then in the digestive system, nitrites can react with amino acids from digested proteins to form nitrosamines. Nitrosamines can then react with nitrogen in the body to form nitrosoureas, which are a big bad issue. Now, while nitrates and nitrites are supposedly nothing to worry about in and of themselves, they're not carcinogenic at all in and of themselves. They're perfectly fine preservatives. They're basically like nitrates are an anion, so that's basically 1/2 of a salt. If you think of sodium chloride, NaCl, if you ionically split that, it's Na plus and Cl minus. Those two things make up salt. And so nitrate salts, it's almost like a different kind of salt that's probably just better suited for processed meats, but sodium ions and chloride ions can't really have a lot done to them inside of the body. But these nitrates they'll turn into nitrites, which will turn into nitrosamines, which will turn into nitrosoureas. Nitrosoureas basically cause every single type of cancer you can think of. There's millions of types of cancers. You're going to have malignant ones, benign ones, parts of different kinds of bodies, muscular ones, skeletal ones, brain cancers, reproductive cancers. There's so many different cancers, and these are such potent chemicals that, because they're often formed in the digestive system and will probably act on the digestive system, and maybe little bits will get inside of the bloodstream, which is a pretty big issue still. That, compared to unprocessed meats only cause a 3% increase in the likeliness of cancers occurring, and that is just inside of the colon and rectum, colorectal cancers. And that can potentially even be considered to not be high enough to actually be considered that it increases cancer, hence why unprocessed meats are group 2A carcinogens rather than group 1. However, processed meats, such as these sausages, such as the stuff that contains the nitrates as preservatives, that causes a 60% increase in the likelihood of cancers occurring. That is absolute madness. That is why there is a big movement in society where our food is actually causing cancer, which is such a massive issue. Sausages and hams and just processed food in general is like such a massive issue for society because it contains these chemicals that can all do stuff and be converted into stuff inside of our body. And as much as scientists and companies will find alternatives, it's almost inevitable that that's going to still do something to the body. And I personally think that we as a human society can live off of unprocessed meat. We did that for so long. Processed meat, sausages and burgers, in my opinion, are not a necessity to society. If you got rid of McDonald's and McDonald's burgers, the world would recover. While people would be sad because they may be addicted in some sense of the imagination to McDonald's, the world would recover, and in the long run, the world would be a better place, in my opinion. And I think with other processed meats, yeah, you can have them in a very moderated scenario, a moderated and occasional situation, but overall, I think we can live without processed meats. If processed meats suddenly stopped being produced, if there was a way to make the production of processed meats really, really, really inefficient, if that was a way that the government was able to do that, or something just happened which meant that would happen, processed meats would stop being produced. And if it's not being produced, then nobody can buy them. But if nobody in the first place buys processed meats and there's like a worldwide boycott, the demand goes down, then no one will produce it because no one's going to buy them. Now, because of the 60% increase in the rate of colorectal cancers, these processed meats are considered as group 1 carcinogens, putting them in the same category as alcohol and smoking. And as much as I think that processed meats, obviously there's less of a risk than smoking and alcohol, they're still causing cancer. And I do think the carcinogenic classification should probably be slightly updated and improved in a way where the group 1, where it is known to cause cancer, is divided into subunits dependent on their potency of causing cancer or their general exposure to society and how common they are found. I think that would be a pretty good way to do it, and like putting less emphasis on group 2A, group 2B, group 3 and 4 carcinogens, because they're not necessarily like really that much of an issue potentially, but things such as asbestos and these processed meats and all that sort of stuff, these are big issues to society, and there should be more emphasis on those than stuff below it, in my opinion. But with that, I recommend subscribing for more content like this, and have a good day.